Alright guys, so the Oppo Find N5 launch event happened this morning, and I have watched it so you don't have to. In this video, I'm going to go over this article that I put together where I'm going to basically just give you everything that you need to know about the Oppo Find N5. So first and foremost, as we already knew, this thing is extremely thin. We do now have the exact numbers. It is 4.21 millimeters thick when it is open, but it's also very, very light. 229 grams puts it right in line with some of the larger slab-style smartphones already on the market, like the iPhone or the S25 Ultra. It's actually quite remarkable that it is as thin and light as it actually is. And getting to that thickness was not easy. In fact, Oppo said during this event that they had to customize that USB-C port. I don't exactly know what this means, but they said that part of the frame itself is acting as part of the connector for the USB-C port. Again, I don't know exactly what that means, but it sounds impressive. Now, like I've talked about on this channel already, we were expecting the Oppo Find N5 to come over to the United States as the OnePlus Open 2. That is not happening. If you want to use this device, you're going to have to import it. With that being the case, even after this event, it's not entirely clear what regions they are shipping this device in. We're going to talk a little bit more about what that means for you later on in the video. But quickly, we can run down some other specifications. As you can see on screen here, we have the full dimensions of the device. The important things, though, I think for most of us, 4.21 millimeters when opened, 8.93 millimeters when closed. Again, right there in range of a normal phone, 229 grams. This thing does have a 7-core version of the Snapdragon 8 Elite. This is probably done to bring down the heat, to bring down the battery consumption. It's still going to be faster than the OnePlus Open. It's still going to be a very, very fast device. Although, don't be shocked if the Z Fold 7 uses the full Snapdragon 8 Elite with all 8 cores. Just keep an eye out for that. We do have an 8.12-inch inner display, and apparently, just like the OnePlus Open, there is a screen protector pre-installed that does kind of have a little bit of a matte look to it, a matte finish. Not quite as good as what we have on the S24 and 25 Ultra, but it's definitely a welcome thing. 2100 nits of peak brightness, which is interesting because last time they said it was like 2800 nits on both screens, and no one was ever able to verify those numbers. So I'm not really sure what to make of that brightness figure. Something to keep in mind. 6.62-inch cover display, which is 2450 nits. Again, peak brightness. What's going on with the brightness? Not exactly sure. But both screens are apparently compatible with an Oppo Pen. That is something you have to buy separately, but the cover display and the inner display can both use their stylus. You have stereo speakers. You have aerospace grade fiber on the back of the device. Now, I saw one person say AKA glass, but I've seen other people say that it doesn't feel like glass. It feels more like plastic, and it's not glass. I don't exactly know what's going on there, but it was done in the name of thinness and lightness. I hope it's not glass. Something that doesn't shatter would be cool. IPX8 and X9 water resistance means this thing can not only be underwater, it can be shot with jets of water and be okay. No dust resistance at all. As you see, that X is just an X. Just as a reminder, the Z Fold 6 does have IP48 for its rating, and what that dust resistance actually means is that it's good against solid particles larger than 1 millimeter. I wouldn't really call that dust at that point. So when we talk about this not having that 4 there, I'm not really all that concerned about it. Just worth mentioning. 16 gigs of LPDDR5X RAM, 512 gigs of UFS 4.0 storage. That is very, very fast. ColorOS 15, a 5600 milliamp hour battery that is using silicon carbide. I've heard it said both ways. Maybe one's wrong. There's no way to know. It's a very, very large battery for a device this thin. And of course, it charges fast, 80-watt wired charging and 50-watt wireless charging using a customized coil. A couple of other interesting hardware notes. Oppo is claiming that their inner screen, the one that folds and that everybody thinks is super, super fragile, it is more fragile than normal glass. That's absolutely true. They're saying that it is a new dual shielded flexible screen. It's made of 9 different layers, and one of those layers is an anti-shock film, which they say will protect against shock impact type events. They say it's 70% more durable against that type of thing. definitely headed in the right direction. Something else that I thought was very, very interesting is the fact that they've tested this thing opening and closing it 100,000 times in extreme temperatures, 50 degrees Celsius all the way down to minus 20 Celsius for us Americans who use Fahrenheit. That is below zero, minus 4 Fahrenheit. I'm always really paranoid. Like right now, last night it was like in the almost single digits here. It was like in like the low teens. And it always makes me paranoid when I'm using one of my folding phones outside and it's well below freezing. And I'm worried that it's going to make that screen be more fragile, more brittle. I'm going to open it and it's going to crack. They've tested against this and they're saying it's not really a problem anymore. Another thing that's not that big of a problem on this device anymore is the crease. Apparently it's 10% more narrow than last time, and it's 30% more shallow than last time. They already had a big lead in terms of their crease, and it sounds like they've just extended it. Let's quickly talk about that camera hardware. So the primary is a 50 megapixel sensor that is from Sony. 1 over 1.56 inches is the actual sensor size. Last year, we had a 48 megapixel sensor that was actually a little bit larger. Now, I haven't dug deeply into the pixel sizes and things like that, but these two are very, very similar. I don't expect there to be some radical difference between the two. I guess I can Google it, and it looks like it has a 1 micron pixel. And if we go back to this was a 1.12 micron pixel. So both the pixels and the sensors are slightly smaller than last year. But if it's a newer sensor, I think all that can basically wash. I'm not worried about it. For the telephoto, it's a 50 megapixel 3x telephoto. 1 over 2.75 inch is the sensor size. That is, again, smaller sensor than last year and actually lower resolution than last year. But we also do have macro. We have a very, very short focus distance, so you can use your telephoto for macro. Hopefully that makes up for it. I'm curious to see how this is going to stack up against last year's telephoto. On paper, it might be worse. And then the ultra wide, not going to dig into this any deeper. It doesn't look good at all, so we're just going to move on. There are also a handful of new just sort of camera features and AI editing tools. Lightning Snap is a thing where you hold down your shutter and it's going to be taking something like 7 photos per second to try and capture movement. In terms of software, it's a lot of stuff that we actually saw unveiled in the Oxygen OS 15 event. Of course, you have Open Canvas, which I think here they're going to call Boundless View, where you can have 2 or 3 applications open at a time and they can shift off screen and do all kinds of fun things with that. But they also showed off their AI-powered universal search. The example that they gave was searching "when is my flight?" It quickly analyzed their device's files and found a PDF that had flight information and delivered that data to the user. This is kind of similar to what Apple showed off with Siri, Apple Intelligence, stuff like that. And there are some other things like AI call summaries, flex mode interpreter, where it sits up like a little tint or a little laptop and the cover display shows the translation being done so both people can see, kind of like dual interpreter mode on the Pixel, something very similar to that. Gemini is, of course, built in. And kind of interestingly, Oppo also showed off some tools to help users send files to their iPhone using Friends, but also to interface with their own Mac devices. As you can see here, actually doing like a remote desktop thing with a MacBook. Kind of cool. All right, so now we get into some of the strange stuff here. I mentioned at the top that they did not actually announce exactly what regions this thing will be launching in, but we did get this report from computerbase.de, and we can quickly translate this into the English language, and we see this quote down here from Oppo. Quote, "At Oppo, we carefully tailor our product launches to each region based on in-depth market research and strategic priorities. The Find N5 will not be launching in Europe." Blah, 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 blah. None of the rest of this stuff actually matters. So for most of us, you're going to need to be importing this device. One easy place to do this is through the Average Dad Tech store. They've already got it listed. You can pre-order it right now, and it's going to start shipping on the 28th of February. You can see in US dollars, $1,936. It is definitely going to be relatively steep. That's par for the course for importing a device like this. You do have other options. I don't think that they've got them up just yet, but Wanda Mobile and GizTop also will probably have this device listed before too long. I still don't see them there, and I don't see them here either, but I would expect them to have them there. AliExpress probably also will have it at some point as well. So there's going to be different options to import. I will tell you, I will be getting one from the Average Dad Tech store. It's going to be on loan to begin with, and then we're going to talk about whether or not I'm going to pay him and keep it or not. There's reasoning for that, which I will cover right now. So when we talk about carriers, who can use this phone and on what carrier? This is where things get a little bit confusing. So they did post on their website officially, these are the cellular network bands that are supported. If you're going to ask in the comments, does it work on carrier X? What you need to do is you need to go online and Google what bands does that carrier that you use, what do they use? And then you need to look at this and see if they are listed. That's currently the best device that I can give you. I use Mint Mobile, which is a company that uses T-Mobile towers, or actually part of T-Mobile now, and they use band 71 for 5G. And if you look at 5G, you do not see N71. And that means, for me, my 5G signal is probably not going to be great. And that is why I'm going to use this thing on loan for a while. Now, Surface Duo, if I'm remembering correctly, that I used for a long time, also lacked band 71. And it wasn't the end of the world, but in certain areas, I would just flat out not have any signal at all. It was really, really bad in some places. So we're going to test drive it, and we're going to go from there. Massive shout out to Average Dad Tech for being willing to do that with me, to work with me in that way. It's very, very cool. And hopefully through that, I can show you guys what that process is like of importing a device, popping your SIM in, what kind of barriers and hurdles there are. It's going to be really, really useful, I hope, for everyone. So guys, without actually having had my hands on the device, that's about the best that I can do of telling you everything that I think you need to know about the Oppo Find N5. And again, hopefully sometime probably early in March, I will have one of my very own in my hands, and I will be able to do a whole lot more than that. So hit that subscribe button before you leave so you don't miss out on that. Let me know in the comments, what kind of things do you want to see? Obvious things notwithstanding, comparisons to the Pixel 9 Pro Fold, the Z Fold 6. We're going to do all of that, comparisons to the old OnePlus Open. We're going to break down that camera too. I got so much content that I'm going to have to make, but if you think it's something I might not think to test, let me know in those comments down below, guys. And thanks for watching. I'll see you on the next one. And until next time, stay nerdy, my friends.